Today I'm going to be testing the Artgraf water-soluble tailor shapes by Viarco. These are blocks of pressed pigment and can be used for drawing or painting. The materials I'm using today are my A4 Etcher cold press watercolor journal that's got 100% cotton paper, and of course the Artgraf tailor shapes in sanguine and white. The sanguine is like a earth red. Now they do come in up to 12 colours, and there are a few different sets available. Links are in the description below. So I drew 4 emus on the page for each of the different techniques that I want to test. The reference photos are from eBird, and I'll link them in the description below. So I was inspired to buy these after watching Tio's review, and you can check out his video here, and envisioned using them for nature journaling, in particular for capturing monochrome landscapes and doing value studies. So I bought the sanguine and the white colours on their own from an art store in Hahndorf, South Australia. But I'd recommend buying them as part of a set for reasons that I'll explain later in the video. To test them, I decided to use 4 different techniques that I'd probably use while out nature journaling. First, I would make a mini landscape or Landscapito, which captures the values in a monochrome study. Next, I used the tablet as a drawing tool and then wet it with a damp brush. In the third test, I layered washes to build depth, and finally I tried a wet and wet and also combined it with a pen to see what that looked like as well. So Landscapitos are meant to be quick, so that you capture the essence of a view without wasting too much time, and you might even be able to fit a couple of these into one sitting. I use them to capture the tonal range and prefer to only use 1 to 2 layers for this reason. So I'm not worrying about colour, but instead identifying the lights and the darks in the landscape in front of me, with the lightest value being the white of the paper and the darkest being the pure pigment. And for this purpose, the Artgraf does a pretty good job, similar to watercolour. As mentioned earlier, these tablets can be used directly for drawing instead of painting, just like tailor chalks. This gives excellent coverage quite quickly, and when you wet it with a brush, that makes it look really vibrant and strong straight away. The parts that are left dry have got a nice texture, especially on this cold press watercolor paper. However, the downside here is how messy holding that tablet is, even with dry hands. I wouldn't really recommend using this anywhere that's got a high humidity, when it's raining, or if you've got sweaty hands from a hike, for example. But it does wash off easily enough, so if you're careful, you could use it to add some interest alongside watercolor. So when bought in a set, they are packaged in this cork board that keeps them from getting out of place and messy because you don't have to handle them. I would recommend buying them in a set for this reason, or finding a similar solution, because the individual plastic sleeves that I bought them in are durable for storage, but not really practical for painting, and need to be put somewhere else when you're actually painting, and that will inevitably lead to making some marks somewhere, either on you or on the paper. Next, I wanted to see how well the pigment layered, so I used a series of dilute washes to build up the volume in the emu's body here. I also added a bit of white on top, and I found that that worked quite well. The layers beneath, when they're dry, don't lift easily, so that makes it ideal for layering. But on the flip side, caution's required because once they're dry, any marks will be very difficult to remove. Here you can also see that the white does dry a lot lighter than at first it would seem, so it's hard to get a very opaque white when it's wet, but you could always use the white tablet as a dry mark. Emus, if you're not familiar with them, are large flightless birds found all over Australia, similar to ostriches with long necks and legs. In fact, they're Australia's largest native bird and reach up to 1.9 metres in height. After mating, the father is the one who does the incubation and rears the young that are really cute and striped. And for the last test, I decided to use 2 techniques. First, the wet and wet by just making the paper wet and adding some of the pigment with a brush, and it behaves just like you would expect for watercolor. Secondly, I outlined the emu with a pen, and the pen had waterproof ink. When I added a light wash of this Artgraf tablet on top of the dried pen, it worked again as expected compared to a watercolor pen and wash. So, will I use these for sketching outdoors? I might, but I think if I had a better option for carrying and holding them, then I would definitely use them a lot more than I might right now. I like how they're just like watercolors and they give a good tonal range. You can draw with them directly to give a bit of a unique texture, and they are a beautiful, rich color. What's holding me back though is their messiness and their price. But considering how much you get, they're quite a large block, and how long they'll probably last, I think they are a good investment. They can also mix just like watercolors, so even though there's only 12 colors available, you can probably paint anything you want from mixes. Have you tried the Artgraf water-soluble tailor shapes? Would you use them for nature journaling or for outdoor sketching? Let me know in the comments below. Remember, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you all in the next video.